Very good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome. Thank you very much for taking your time off and being part of this session today. I am Sophia, and I'm a family member of the Bone Marrow Transplant Support Foundation. I am joined here today by Neeraj, the father and founder of our foundation. We also have Sheetal, and we have other members of the foundation as well. Our special guest today is Dr. Mahesh. Thank you, Dr. Mahesh, for taking your time off and being with us here this evening. Dr. Mahesh is an Ayurvedic practitioner for the last over 20 years. He is an honorary consultant at the Health Center at University of Pune. He is also an anchor teacher and faculty at Vedika Gurukul, USA. Dr. Mahesh has been felicitated with multiple awards for his remarkable work in the field of Ayurveda. A sought-after expert by many, he is a panelist for the Ayurvedic consultant for the governor of Maharashtra for a tenure of over 6 years. Thank you, Dr. Mahesh. I hope there is much more to add to this. And above all, the introductions that we've just given, I think the best introduction for Dr. Mahesh is that he's a wonderful human being and one of the very few modest and doctors that I have come across. So moving on to the session that was planned today. Our scriptures describe food or anna as Purna Brahma. But for us, food is about only 3 elements. That is, how does it look, how appealing it is, how does it smell, and how does it taste. As for the new fad now, there's just added one more criteria, and that is how many calories does it have. So we've added that extra element. But the element of understanding food as Purna Brahma or understanding food as medicine for us is absolutely unclear. So Dr. Mahesh today will be helping us understand how food or anna as per Ayurveda is medicine completely in itself. So over to you, Dr. Mahesh. And if anybody has any questions, we'll have the last 15 minutes for a question and answer with Dr. Mahesh. And in the meanwhile, you can also send us a chat message and we will write it down if there is something, and we'll pick it up later on. So over to you, Dr. Mahesh.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you for wonderful introduction. And first of all, I would like to thank Neeraj ji for initiating this whole activity. So I'm very happy to be with all of you. So today we'll be discussing about the concept of Ayurvedic diet. So, or let us say the concept of diet as per Ayurvedic thought process. So let me brief you about what Ayurveda is. So what exactly Ayurveda does and a little bit about Ayurveda. So when we say Ayurveda, we all know it's a traditional system of medicine which is originated in India. So, which is absolutely right. So Ayurveda is basically a system which focuses on prevention of the diseases as well as management of the diseases. And for that, we use various kinds of herbs, herbo-mineral preparations. We use different bhasmas also. We do panchakarma, which are like body treatments, cleansing treatments. So all those things are part of Ayurveda, which are like the main facets of Ayurveda. But along with that, there are a few other important things which you cannot take away from Ayurveda, and which is diet and lifestyle. So Ayurveda talks about diet and lifestyle to an extent that these are the things that can actually heal you completely from a disease also. So it is that potential. So how does it do that? What are the thoughts behind it? So we'll just discuss those particular fundamental things, and then I'll talk about a few other important principles that are necessary when we plan Ayurvedic food. So normally, when we think about any diet, so whenever we talk about diet, as Sophia said, there are 3 important points whenever you see the food. But along with that, someone who's, let's say, an avid nutritionist or someone who has interest in nutrition would actually think of diet on the basis of pyramid of diet, which is like calories, then proteins, carbs, minerals, or all those things. However, Ayurveda, in a way, I would say, contrary to that, Ayurveda is actually something completely different from that angle. So in Ayurveda, we don't think about carbohydrates, we don't think about, let's say, uh, protein, that kind of concept. What we do or what we look at a food is from its inherent qualities, inherent medicinal qualities that every food possesses. So what happens is like every food has certain specific qualities. And when we are saying food, it is basically a herb or a spice or a grain which is grown outside in the nature. For that matter, even animal product also. So everything has their own specific properties. Ayurveda understands those properties based on your own physical needs. So accordingly, we treat those particular conditions. For example, when we think about kidney stone, or whenever there is a situation of kidney stone, there's a usual recommendation from most of the traditional people or Ayurvedic doctors or even households that, okay, you have kulthi ka kadha, which is like kulthi is basically, it's called horse gram, a kind of pulse. So kulthi or kulit or horse gram. So this is basically a pulse or a legume which is used for specifically disintegrating the kidney stones and getting it released from your body. So it has that specific property. And that is its own inherent quality, its own property, which cannot be replaced by any other pulse. So that's how every food, every herb, spice is studied, and accordingly, a plan is usually made. Now, if we want to go deeper into this, we can actually see like even though there are specific qualities like this, but at the same time there are certain fundamental principles that Ayurveda follows, and those principles are for the physiology, for the pathology, and based on that, even the medicines and diet is planned according to those principles. So these food items, these dietary plans, they have a strong foundation of Ayurvedic principles, and accordingly the diet is planned. Similar to kulthi, there's another vegetable which is commonly used, and that is suran, or in Hindi it's also called jimikan, and in English it is called as elephant yam. So that is something which is extremely beneficial for hemorrhoids, fissures, all those kinds of things. So that's its own property. And you cannot replace that with any other tuber. You cannot replace that with a potato. And let's say, okay, this is also something that grows under the ground and you can use it for same kind of purpose. It doesn't work that way. So it needs to have those specific medicinal qualities in it. And once you understand these qualities and once you fit them to the disease mechanism, to the pathology, what's happening inside the body, so then you can treat those conditions. And that's how the food that we normally eat can also act as a medicine. And that's how it is used in practice. So normally in practice, whenever a patient comes to a Vaidya, medicines, herbs, those are given. Along with that, there's usually a diet plan. So what foods will be beneficial in the process of healing and what kinds of foods won't be helpful in this particular process. So that is all recommended and that helps a lot. Just the way we talked about food as a medicine. So in the similar way, there are certain foods which can actually be harmful for the body or harmful for that particular condition also. So those specific things are they are recommended to avoid them. So those things can be avoided. So this is how every vegetable, every spice, every grain is studied like a herb. Their medicinal properties are used in the treatment, and then you can get the benefits out of it. And when we talk about these foods, these spices, so it's not just these physical items, but it comes along with various kinds of rules and regulations around food. So someone who stays up at night like till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and experiences some acidity. So as we commonly understand that milk, a glass of milk would be good to pacify the acidity. But you cannot just replace milk with this kind of habit. So you need to change your habits also. A proper lifestyle, and along with that, proper food, that makes a proper healthy lifestyle so that you can correct your problems. So this is something we need to keep in mind. And like, as I said, the lifestyle, in the similar way, the food, how you cook it, what kind of ingredients we use in that particular recipe, what season we are into, what place we are into. So all those things are taken into consideration to plan a diet for someone. And then it becomes beneficial for that particular condition or that individual. I'll certainly talk about these specific points in detail after a short while. Now, just before that, let me clear one myth about Ayurvedic food, or let's say Ayurvedic cuisine. So normally when we talk about Ayurvedic food or Ayurvedic diet to the patients, or for that matter, even when we talk about Ayurvedic restaurant. So actually we have an Ayurvedic restaurant called Pathyam at one of our activities. So we'll talk about that later. But when we talk about Ayurvedic food, usually most of the people have some apprehension that, okay, that may be something which is not suitable for us. And the reason is people associate Ayurvedic food with just cooked vegetables, some juices, some raw food, some kind of food without salt or some kind of spices. So this is how people usually associate food with. So this is a kind of food which is usually a practice in naturopathic medicine. It also has its own benefits and its own role in our health, but that is not Ayurveda. So Ayurveda or Ayurvedic food. Yeah. So Ayurvedic food is something which specifically involves Agni Samskar or heat treatment. In other words, cooking. So Ayurveda believes in cooking. So cooking could be then roasting, then frying, then boiling, whatever kind of treatment, heat treatment you give to the food, that enhances the qualities of the food. It makes it lighter to digest. And once you make it lighter to digest, the metabolism also gets better. Because finally, what we need is that the food is for the benefit of our health. The purpose of food is to impart strength to the tissues inside our body. So nowadays, motto for most of the people is to lose weight, but that's not an ideal thing. So the food is there to strengthen our tissues. If we don't eat anything, if we go on fasting, so we in a way lose strength in our tissues, and that is actually a harmful thing. So having right kind of food and creating strength in your tissues is the main aim of Ayurveda, and that we all need to keep in mind, and accordingly we need to follow that. And for that purpose, the food is usually planned as per your digestive capacity. Your digestive capacity, how your metabolism is going, so that whatever kind of food you're eating, that should get assimilated and absorbed by the body. Now, a very common example, what we see in the society is that whenever there is fever, people usually do not have any kind of appetite. But in spite of that, there's a constant pressure from the other family members that my child should eat something because he's feeling weaker. But the thing is, right now, his appetite is completely lost. There's no appetite. So the body cannot take food inside. So even if you stuff something or if you give something to your child, the boy or the girl may not be able to process that. and it will be again stagnated in your body, and that will be harmful for the fever. So that's why that is the time when we are supposed to fast. We are supposed to not eat anything. So that particular principle we have to keep in mind, and accordingly we need to plan our food. So appetite plays an important role in any diet, and certainly yes, in Ayurvedic diet. So back to Ayurvedic cooking or Ayurvedic fundamentals of cooking. So heat treatment or Agni Sanskar is the most important asset or most important activity that you do to your food to make it lighter. Similar to that, use of oils, use of ghee in moderation, of course, while cooking is important. And similar to that, or in addition to that, use of right kind of spices and right amount of spices is also used in cooking the food. So sometimes what happens is when people start understanding the benefits of spices, they tend to use them in excessive quantity. So that is also not needed. If you're making some kind of sabji, some vegetable, and you do not taste the vegetable, but you just taste the spice, so that's not an ideal thing. You need to have spices in moderation, in a subtle way, so that they are benefiting your body, they are helping your body to overall improve the metabolism and help digest the food in effective way. So that is the role of spices. So that's how we need to use them. So that's something we have to keep in mind. So with this, most of us would think that, okay, this is almost like our daily food, our traditional food, like what our ancestors used to have. Yes, that is true. So what kind of food our ancestors used to have, that is very much close to Ayurvedic food. But not all the traditions are Ayurvedic, because in our traditions, we have so many quick fixes. Quick fixes in the sense, whenever we do not have appetite, so we would make something quicker, something simpler that will just help in satiate as a satiating food and also nourishing. Like normally, mothers usually say that, okay, my son or my daughter is not eating anything, so at least let him eat some chips. That will be something feeling. So on the same lines, in our traditions also, we have some things which are not Ayurvedically perfect. So I'll talk about those things also, and we need to stay away from these specific things also. And one of the most common things related to this particular part is certain kinds of foods which are incompatible with each other. So they are not supposed to go with each other. They are not supposed to be eaten together, but still we have them as a tradition. We have them as a regular part of our meal. So these foods are mostly, let's say, fruits and milk and meat, like chicken, fish, and mutton, all those things, and milk and salt. So these are three most common, like I would say, these are the representatives of incompatible food combinations because they are the biggest ones. And now when I'm talking about this, most of you might think that, okay, luckily we don't do these things. If you're not doing it, that's absolutely great. But these are the three things which we sometimes do it in unknowing way, or unknowingly we just happen to do that. For example, we don't do these things, but we have, let's say, sitafal milkshake, or we have some chikku milkshake, something like that. So that is a combination where fruit and milk, they're going together. So now what happens with these combinations is that they are not poisons as such. Poisons in the sense, they are not poisons which will create something immediately. But these are things which are toxic to your body because the combination creates that won't get completely metabolized in perfect time, and that certain moisture, certain part of it remains stagnated in your body. And that stagnation adds up to overall ill health of your body, and that lays a foundation for different kinds of diseases. So that's how we need to look at it. Similar to that, like milk and salt. Normally, nobody does that, but still, Nowadays, what we are doing is, when I'm saying milk, it also implies cream also. Milk and cream together, they will go in this particular category. So normally the food that we are eating nowadays, mostly in the restaurants, so they have a tendency to add some cream to your milk, to your vegetable, make it creamy, make it more tasty. So those are the things which are harmful for our body. So we need to stay away from them. There are so many recipes nowadays that we see on internet or on YouTube or on different videos on TV, where it is advised to add some cream to it, add some milk to it. So these are the things which we need to stay away from. Now, when I'm talking about this, you may think about different instances, different places where these kinds of foods are popularly used. And I'll give you one of the examples here. Like in Ladakh, people use tea, which is milk with salted butter in it. So there's a reason for it. And that is a kind of quick fix which is used by people in Ladakh. So what they do is, the salt and the milk, that creates excess moisture inside the body. And when you are in an environment which is extremely dry, so to cope up with that dryness, you need some moisture inside the body. So this mixture, in a way, helps to cope up with that dryness. So that's how it is commonly used. But that's not an ideal way, or that's not an Ayurvedic way. So Ayurvedic way is something that will help you at that moment as well as throughout the life. And so on those lines, I would say the food that is commonly used in Rajasthan, not every Rajasthani food, but the style of cooking in Rajasthan with good amount of ghee, good amount of oil in dry weather. So that is helpful for the body. So that's how seasons also play some role in planning your diet. So this is how we need to understand the food. Similar to that, when we are talking about meat and milk. So again, let's say most of us may be vegetarians, then no question arises. But still, there are people who enjoy meat sometimes. So then we come across different kinds of cuisines, like let's say Italian cuisine and different other foods. So when you use white sauce, like chicken Alfredo and all those kinds of things, again, milk and cream is used in it. And that goes along with the chicken, that goes along with the meat, that again remains stagnated in your body. And Ayurveda specifically mentions that when you are habitual of eating these kinds of food, these stagnations may lead to different kinds of diseases. And one of them is skin disease. So just to give you an idea, we all need to stay away from these kinds of things. Now, let me add one more thing to this particular point, is that it is possible that some of us may have eaten these kinds of foods in the past, or they have been eating it for many years. So let me give you an idea that it's not something that you have it and you eat that particular food for a few days, for a few years, and immediately it will get manifested into something, some kind of disease. So it's a very slow process. If you have been doing this, you need to stop it now. You need to stop it for your kids, for your family, so that you can build your health, you can build strength in your body now onwards. So that's something what Ayurveda mainly focuses on. And these are the quick fixes we need to stay away from, even though they are traditional. Fermented food is also similar to that. I'll talk about fermented food some other time. Like just like fermented food, there are so many dietary plans, dietary habits. So in the present scenario, we come across, let's say, veganism, keto diet, then different other forms of diet to lose weight. Let's say General Motors diet, then intermittent fasting, Dikshit diet, which is also a popular coffee diet. So these are the things people are following it. And some of them are doing it for improving health, for reducing their cholesterol. Some are doing it to lose weight. So all those things, people are doing it. And when I look at it from Ayurveda's perspective, I think these habits or these particular practices, they are not bad at all. So they have their own importance. But that importance is not long lasting. That needs to be done for certain phase, for certain period of time. And they are in practice just because some people may have gotten good results because of it. And that's why they are promoting it. So, which is absolutely good. And they have benefits of it. But if we keep on overdoing the same kind of plan for long period of time, so then it may create harm to your body. Just to give you a little example, what I'm saying is that whenever, let's say, an obese person or someone who is suffering from hypercholesterolemia, which is like raised cholesterol, triglycerides, all that. So in that situation, when you go on, let's say, a vegan diet, which will help you, but that will help you for a certain period of time. If you keep on doing it for years together, months together, so then it, in a way, will have potential to create dryness in your body. So we don't want dryness also. The way we don't want excessive weight, excessive fat, on the same lines, we don't want dryness also. Because if the dryness gets accumulated, so that will lead to bath-related problems like pains and aches in the body. So that's something we need to keep in mind and plan accordingly. Now, since we have talked about different parts, different specific areas of Ayurveda, let us go one by one into 8 fundamental principles of Ayurveda. So while speaking about these fundamental principles, I'll be able to give you an idea how Ayurvedic principles work and how Ayurveda looks at food. Accordingly, it will be helpful to create a foundation of Ayurvedic diet in your mind. So in Ayurveda, this concept is called as Ashtau Ahar Vidhi Vishesh Aitanani. So it's a single Sanskrit word. It means 8 fundamental principles or rules of Ayurvedic diet. So in Ayurveda, the first thing is it is understood that what is the nature of this food? Like, is it light? Is it heavy? Is it oily? Is it dry? What are the qualities of food? So that is understood. And these are the qualities based on Ayurvedic principles. Once you understand that, you accordingly plan the food. For example, someone who wants to gain weight, so urad dal would be the best food for that individual. So in that case, having moong dal may not help to that individual. So for that person, urad dal will be helpful. And exactly the opposite way, someone who wants to lose weight, moong dal would be a better option. So this is how we need to understand. Similarly, when someone has to focus on specific other qualities, like whether it is lighter or heavier, so we can have a comparison between wheat and ragi, the finger millet. So these also are specific to grains which are commonly used in practice, and each one has their own benefits. So which one to use where and what are those benefits? So that actually determines the nature of that particular food ingredient, and keeping that in mind, we plan the food. Similar to that, when now we have, let us say, shortlisted a grain. So how to cook that, how to prepare something out of it. So that is also important. So that's why how you process it, that plays an important role. So that is like the second fundamental principle. Now, this principle helps in various ways. Like when we are talking about, let's say, gluten intolerance or wheat intolerance, this is what people are suffering from. So now, this particular concept of gluten intolerance or wheat intolerance, so that according to Ayurveda is your Agni's inability to digest the food. So your Agni needs to be improved. And that can be, one can work on that with the help of improving Agni, with the help of some herbs. So that can happen. And when it happens, so you need to start wheat in a very gradual way. So instead of having wheat pasta, one can have wheat chapati, wheat roti, which is roasted on fire. Instead of boiling in water, when you roast it in fire, these two things will certainly have a different action on your body, on your Agni. So the one which is roasted on fire, so fire and air together will make it easily digestible. So that's how these processes play an important role. Similar example would be of yogurt. So in Ayurveda, we don't recommend yogurt or curd that often, or most of the times it is kind of restricted. It falls in the restricted category only. And the reason is it tends to accumulate fluid in your body. So it allows water retention to happen. But on the other side, when you use, when you add some water to it and when you churn it or blend it with a blender and you convert it into a buttermilk, so then that itself is a completely different recipe. So even though it's from the same family, same dairy family, it is different, and it will have impact over your Agni, over your digestion, and won't cause water retention. So that adding water and churning it, that created change in that particular food ingredient. So that making specific churning and adding something to it, so that has created a massive change in a particular food. So that also becomes one of the fundamental principles. So this is how you need to understand food, plan the food, and then we can get benefits out of it. Now, as far as the combinations of foods are concerned, we have already talked about incompatible combinations about food. Similar to that, there are some food items when they are combined together, they are beneficial. So how to combine them, how much quantity, so that all needs to be understood, and that also comes into planning your diet. So that's how these things are important. Now, another next point is very logical kind of point, which is quantity of food. So how much quantity of food you're eating, that also plays an important role. So if you want to nourish yourself, to strengthen yourself, so having a healthy, let's say, roti made with wheat, and if you compare that with popcorn, so quantity-wise, popcorn might look bigger, but heavier, nourishing, and strength-giving would be wheat. So that is something we need to understand. So what we are eating and what is the quantity of that particular food, that is important. And similar to that, like if someone has recommended you to have wheat ki roti, so how much quantity you're supposed to eat? So having just a small piece of wheat roti won't suffice the need of your body. So then you need to have it as per your appetite, as per your Agni. So that also comes into play, which is an important part. The next point is place. What region you are in, what place you are in, that also plays an important role. And exactly for the same reason, we have different kinds of cuisines in India. So you go to Kerala, they have a different style of eating. You have a different style of eating in Gujarat, Maharashtra. Then if you go to Bihar, the style would be different. In Rajasthan, food will be different. So this is how you cope up with the region, because whatever is surrounding you, whatever is there in the region, in the nature where you are, so that has some impact on your body. And when I'm saying body, it's the body physiology, your appetite, your Agni, and accordingly you need to plan your things, because throughout your life you need to nurture your Agni, your digestive capacity. If you nurture that, then only you will be able to take right kind of food inside and metabolize it and gain strength in your body. So finally, having strength in your body is all we need in this life. And when I'm saying body, it naturally goes along with it. Mind also goes with it. So body and mind. So on those lines, when we are talking about different regions, so let us take an example of Rajasthan. So as we mentioned Rajasthan, so in Rajasthan, the food is quite rich in ghee, oil. And if you look at it, there is a reason for it. The dryness, the weather actually demands that much amount of ghee from the food, because body will utilize it. But if at the same time, if you are in a humid environment and if you eat same kind of food, so then that will keep stagnations in your food, in your body. And that won't be the best thing for your body. So that's how you need to understand and plan food so that you can get benefits out of it. Similar to that, we have another point, which is time. What time you are eating this food. So when we are saying time, it's not just the time of the day, but also what season you are into. That also plays an important role. And according to Ayurveda believes in planning the food as per the season. Because as we talked about region, places, they have impact on your food, on your Agni and your body. Similar to that, every season has some impact on your body. And that impact is studied in form of Agni. Whether your Agni, when I'm using the word Agni regularly, it can be understood as digestive capacity. So in a particular season, we may have a strong digestive capacity. On the other hand, there will be seasons when we won't have digestive capacity. On the similar lines, there will be some other changes which body might be going through. Like typically in spring, people have a lot of phlegm coming, cough badta hai, and then people have a tendency to have allergies, which are typically known by the name spring allergies. So this is how changes are happening to our body. And accordingly, we need to plan the food. For example, if we are in the summer, so we need to have lighter meals, but at the same time, the food should have some oily or greasy kind of element in it so that we will cope up with the dryness of the summer. On the other hand, if we are talking about, let's say spring, according to Ayurveda, is the time moisture inside the body is increased and that tries to ooze out from your body. So which we normally call it as kapha dosh or phlegm in English. So that kind of thing happens. And to cope up with that, we have specific kinds of foods in that particular season, which is more of a dry kind of food, which will help to absorb that excess moisture. And if you look at our festivals keenly, you will notice that there is Chaitra Padwa, which is like the beginning of Hindu New Year. And around that period, we eat neem leaves as a tradition. But that tradition came specifically to pacify excess moisture inside the body. So that's how it is beneficial. But that same neem cannot be helpful throughout the year because otherwise, in other seasons, it would start depleting the moisture from your body and will create your body very dry. So that's the reason why you need to plan everything as per the season, whether it's food, whether it is any kind of beverage, or it could be your medicine also. It has to be planned according to the season. So that we need to take into consideration. Then along with that, there are two more specific fundamental points which are necessary in planning your food. The one which I'm going to talk about is rules of consumption of food. So how do we have our food? What are the timings of eating food? What is the quantity of eating food? So these are fundamental points. And to answer to that is we need to have our food as per our digestive capacity. So that is like very simple single line answer to that. And for that to understand that, you need to understand all other factors so that you will be able to digest the food. You will be able to eat right amount of food and you will be able to digest the food. So to elaborate that a little bit, I would say in Ayurveda, there's a simple rule, which is said, which is mentioned something like this, that imagine your stomach. Okay. Accidentally, I was muted for a moment. Now I'm back. So as I was saying, the meal quantity. So imagine your stomach into 4 compartments. Out of those 4 compartments, 2 compartments should be filled with solid food. one compartment should be filled with liquids. So it could be water, it could be chas, it could be some juice, some soup, whatever you like. So these three compartments. And the fourth compartment is kept empty. And the reason we keep it empty is just because it allows some space for the food to get mixed up. And so that you will process the food in wonderful way and digest the food in proper way. So that is what Ayurveda specifically focuses on. Then there are, actually speaking, there are many rules which we all talk about that, like in the family also. We tell these rules to our kids that don't watch TV and eat food, all those things. So which are quite common rules. So in other words, we call it as a food meditation. So before eating any meal, if you close your eyes for a moment so that you gather all your thoughts to your meal plate. So you're not thinking about next meeting, what I'm going to have after my lunch, or you're not thinking about some kind of harsh talk with your colleagues or your boss, all kinds of things. Just focus yourself on the food so that your digestion would be better. So this is how we need to understand. And that's why we call it as a food meditation. You just either, if you know some mantra, you can chant a mantra so that your thoughts will gather at one particular place. Or if you don't have that much time, just close your eyes for a moment and then start eating your food. So that is food meditation. That is also one of the rules of consumption of food. Then another important rule, what Ayurveda says, is that no snacking. So normally what happens is people have a tendency to keep munching something. So if it's people usually have a tendency that, okay, I had my meal at 12:31 and now it's 3:30, I'm feeling hungry. So let me eat something. So people have a tendency to munch on something. So then they think that, okay, I'll have some nuts so that it will be something healthy. But in this process, what you do is that you overburden your digestive capacity, which in other words is not healthy for your body. So you let your Agni completely digest previous meal. And when you're properly hungry, so that time you have a proper meal. So with that meal, if you want to have nuts, you can have it. That becomes a helpful habit. So this is how we need to plan the food. And so these days, one of the rules I always want to focus on is we need to understand what is the importance of Ayurvedic or what is the importance of food in general. We are not on this planet to lose weight. That is what we all need to understand. If we have gained weight and that too because of some ailment, that's a different story. But everyone nowadays is getting into an act of losing weight and having a specific figure and all that. So let us not get into that particular trap, because in that process, what we do is we in general lose strength of our tissues, and that causes problems in the long run. So let us stay healthy. That should be our goal. And now the last point, which is related to these fundamental principles, is that we talked about so many fundamental principles, but who are they for? So we need to assign an individual for whom we are planning this diet, and we need to understand the digestive capacity of that individual, what phase that person is going through. If the person is having some kind of disease, some kind of health issue. So accordingly, we need to plan all these things. And that's how we need to plan the diet for this individual. So this is how Ayurvedic food and Ayurvedic meals can be planned. So overall in this discussion, what we have done is we have touched upon many points, and there's a possibility that you may have some questions. We can certainly discuss that. But just before that, I'll just give you a general plan of diet as a take home from this discussion or this particular talk. So first of all, when we are talking about food, when we are planning our diet on a daily basis for a fairly healthy person, let's say, So having breakfast, having lunch, having dinner, so these are the common practices that we all go through. According to Ayurveda, lunch is the main meal of the day. So you need to plan your lunch at a very specific time. So it could be around noon time when the sun is at its top at our apex. So that time our digestive capacity is also at its best. So we need to understand that, and our main meal should go around that period. So let's say your main meal, which is lunch, can go around 12 to 1, around that period. So 12:31 or maximum, let's say 1:30. Going beyond that, it's like you are eating the food, but it may not get digested or assimilated in a complete way. So that's the point from where some ill health related issues can get started. So that's how we need to plan our lunch. The way we plan our lunch, accordingly, we need to plan our breakfast. So breakfast should be that much quantity which will make you hungry by noontime. So that is what we need to understand. What happens is people tend to have late breakfast, heavy breakfast, and then lunch goes for a toss. So that's not a healthy thing. And accordingly, even dinner time also goes very late. So that should not happen. So the way we talked about lunchtime around 12:31. So in the same way, dinner, ideally according to Ayurveda, should be before sunset. If that is difficult, it should be at least before 8. So that's how we need to plan. And when we are planning these specific meal timings, we also need to understand that our digestive capacity should be able to process all these kinds of foods. And for that, we need to have a proper lifestyle. And one of the most important things in our lifestyle is our sleep. So going to bed early and getting up early in the morning, that is very important. So you wake up around sunrise, or in ideal scenario before sunrise. That helps to bring your appetite in a healthy way. And then you will have appetite to have breakfast. So if you have a habit to wake up late in the morning, you do not have appetite for your breakfast. And then, but still on top of that, if you have breakfast, then you have a late lunch, late dinner, late sleep. So the whole cycle gets shifted. You need to have a conscious understanding of our daily routine and plan accordingly. Once you do that, that can certainly help you in various ways. And that can be beneficial in prevention of many diseases, like minor issues like digestive issues, acid reflux, hyperacidity. We all would get corrected with these simpler changes in the lifestyle. So this is all I wanted to share with you today. So I think we are open for questions. So if I know the questions, I'll be happy to answer all of them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vayesh. That's one of the most informative sessions I have personally attended, and I'm sure the audience thinks the same. We've got some comments from people talking about it's very informative. So thank you very much for that. So we now leave it open to the audience to ask questions to Dr. Vayesh. I have one personally, so I'll wait for the others and then talk about mine.
I have a question, especially regarding the vegan diet that, it has trend of following in. Like in India, we get milk from local dairy where, the cows are treated properly and everything. But like I stay in Sydney, and here the milk is like very much, industrialized product where, the cows are not treated properly. They don't get milk properly and very ill treated. And then when we got that milk and we use it, I mean, that doesn't have the same kind of benefit which Ayurveda describes, isn't it? I mean, it becomes very challenging to, replace that product or, I mean, it has been our very basic or, fundamental part of our diet since the childhood. But now if we think from that perspective, to replace that, it becomes very difficult. And, consuming that is also not as healthy as it is. So it becomes very confusing or very, very...
No, I got your point. Yeah, which makes sense. So to answer that, I would say what you're saying makes perfect sense. But in spite of that, so even though cows are ill, I'm not promoting that particular thing, but even though cows are ill-treated, even though the milk is kind of processed and all that, but still, when you use that milk, you see benefits. So that is how amazing that Gomata is. So that is something I want to share with you. Now, I won't support this kind of ill-treating and like bad behavior, cramping them in cages and milking them like crazy. So all those things are very bad. But to find the solution, so finally what we want is we want milk, we want all the dairy for our benefit, because that gives right amount of moisture to your body. But at the same time, we don't want injustice to cows also. So we need to find a middle solution to this. And the answer to this is really difficult, because when we are talking in terms of bigger societies, bigger metros, these things may not be easily accessible. But still, I'll share you an example. I teach in an institute in US, and so the same kind of problem is faced there also. And there is a particular concept which is called cow share. So I teach in an institute which is in Berkeley, close to San Francisco. And in the north of San Francisco, there are some places where cows are there, and those shepherds have cows and all that. So they take the milk and they have a particular practice. They call it as cow share, and they distribute it amongst their specific members of that cow share club. And that's how people get good quality of milk, where cows are wandering around. So they are not just stationary and sitting at one place. They are moving around, they are grazing, they are eating different kinds of grass, because that all plays an important role in improving the quality of your milk. So I don't know if I have answered your question, but I just discussed few points related to that. So if cow share is a possibility, that's great. If not, I would say going for milk is still an option. But again, that is up to each one of us, because when we feel injustice, we may not feel like having it. But in spite of that, this Gomata is so amazing. Cow's milk is so amazing that quality of milk, quality of ghee is still absolutely wonderful. Because one of the cow clubs I'm associated with is Vrindavan Cow Club, where there is A2 milk and cows are grazing all over, and happy cows, everything. But in spite of that, when I see people who are consuming regular milk, which is industrialized milk, still they are having benefits because of milk. So that's how it is. So we need to find some middle solution in this. I hope I tried to answer your question.
Yes, definitely. So, I mean, if we don't get access to probably the cow share or a better way of getting milk, still milk would be a good part of diet. If we could not, I mean, we should not, what I can say, not excessively use it, but then we should not avoid it completely.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sir, I think there's a question from Alpa. Alpa, if you could unmute and can ask the question.
Yes, namaste, sir.
Namaste.
Thank you very much for very good guidance, sir.
Thank you.
I have a question that with the present situation, when we are working with private companies and private institutes and all, as you said that to follow the timings of that eating timings, it's very, very difficult. And yes, we are facing the problem of say gas trouble, acidity, reflux. So how to reduce with the routine of our jobs and all?
Yeah. Yeah, this is actually like a practical question, what we are facing. And I'm actually facing this question with my patients almost every day, because some patients say that, okay, I'm in this particular job, I cannot get time around noon time for my meal, for my lunch. So in that case, if you happen to have a late lunch, so make sure you're eating a smaller lunch. You're not eating a heavy meal, and maybe some digestive support can be beneficial, like having a pinch of ajwain after your meals. That can be something which is beneficial. Again, that's a kind of alternative, not the best solution. You always need to try towards the ideal, but I know it is not convenient all the time. So then this option would be the best.
Right, sir. Sir, one more thing.
Yeah.
You know that even stress and mental state also affects our digestive system. We are always yoga, pranayam. Still, stress affects. So at that time, what type of care we should take so that it affects less?
Right. So the thing is, when we talk about stress, we talk about mental issues. Let's not say diseases, like mental ups and downs, psychological ups and downs, some stress, feeling down, anxiety, all those things. So these are basically, they happen when we in a way lose the stability from the body. And whatever happens to our body gets reflected on our mind. So if we are habitual of eating very light kind of meals, or if we are eating salads and very meager quantity of food on a daily basis, so then we fail to replenish strength in our body. And then we, in a way, lose the stability. And that stability gets reflected on the mind. And then we are prone for stress and all that. And to support what I'm saying, think about people, what they usually say when they feel anxiety, when they feel stressed out. They always say that I want my comfort food. And the comfort food is usually something sweet, something heavy, like a cheesecake, some chocolate cake or something like that. And when they have it, they feel good because temporarily that food is giving stability. So on those lines, if you are experiencing some stress, some kind of instability like this, eating something which is nourishing will be helpful. So I would recommend having a dry date. Dry date is apna chuara or kharik.
Kharik.
So that can be eaten. One kharik, one chuara per day, and some walnut, akhroat. That will be helpful to overall cope up with the stress, some like increased range of emotions. This will be helpful.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Maheshji, there is always this thing of having salads. And, then sometimes we overdo the salad part, or also, the sprouts. Now, now we hear that sprouts are good. So we keep sprouting and we keep eating sprouts. And then that creates a lot of dryness. I have gone through a treatment with you where you kind of explained me. So can you bring that to light? Because I think a lot of us do like salad meals or,
Absolutely. Yeah. And to be very frank with you, when we talk about Ayurvedic food, Ayurvedic concepts, so sometimes we also feel that, okay, eating salad makes you feel lively, makes you feel fresh. That gives you a good feeling, no doubt about that. But what happens is salads, basically, they are not cooked. So they take time to get digested. So your digestive capacity gets consumed a lot to digest that particular salad. So in that process, you are utilizing your digestive capacity excessively, and then you somehow create disturbance with the other functions of your Agni, other functions of digestive capacity, which is metabolism. And what typically happens is that then you start disturbing your metabolism, which in the long run may lead to certain kinds of nutritional deficiencies. Like people would get some B12 deficiency, calcium deficiency, vitamin D deficiency. And when you see the report, you notice that, okay, I have been eating so well. I'm eating salad, I'm eating right kind of food and all that. But what's happening is your digestion, your assimilation, your metabolism, so that's not at its best. And that's why you are not able to process it. And in addition to that, I will say your digestion comes first and then the nutrition. So first you have to focus on the food which can get easily digested. So that's why Ayurveda doesn't recommend so much on raw food or salad. But it's not completely true that Ayurveda completely says no to raw food or salad. So it allows in some way that if you have excellent digestive capacity, you can have small quantity of it. And that quantity, not mentioned in Ayurvedic text, but overall in practice, what we usually recommend is that 10% of your complete meal can be your salad. That is okay. And on top of that, if you can add, if you temper it, like add some chokka to it with some ghee, some spices like zira and cumin seeds, and then you have it, that would actually add value to your salad and it will get easily digested. So that was about the salad part. Then the second thing, what Sheetalji you mentioned was sprouts. So according to Ayurveda, Ayurveda understands everything in a very deep and minute way. So the way when we keep certain pulses in water to let them sprout, so they in a way hold on to water and then the sprout comes out. So that water holding capacity, exactly the same capacity or the property gets transferred to your body. And then your body starts holding on to water, which in other words, we can call it as water retention. And it's not always just the water retention, but it may lead to an environment which is favorable for worm infestations. Luckily or unluckily, we don't nowadays go into the soil or touch the earth or dirt. So we hardly get worm infestations. We, in the sense, as a society, I'm talking, but still, because of that water retention, body in a way develops an environment which is more watery, more moisture is accumulated in the body. And then in the long run, it again disturbs the metabolism. So that's why Ayurveda doesn't recommend these two things on a big scale. But once in a while, if you have it, if you have good digestive capacity, it won't create any blunder. So it will be okay to have once in a while.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. I have a question.
Yes.
Is that we are essentially Gujaratis. And for us, like farsan is a lifeline for us, where we cannot do without farsans.
Yeah.
So is there an ideal time, like when we take the farsans, or is it a complete no-no? Because many of them also take it along with the lunch or along with dinner. They need a little bit of farsan, So I'm just trying to understand that, what is the right way of eating and, what are the precautions that we should take?
Yeah. So, like whenever I think about these dietary habits or the traditions, what we all have been doing in different regions. So there is some thought process behind we think about these specific habits and we associate that with the region. So think about a dry weather or the dry region where you are eating normal food. But if there is something which is fried in the sense, not deep fried kind of thing, but something which has got some oil in it. So that in a way is supportive for your system, supportive for your body physiology. And that's why you get hooked onto it. You get you get attracted to these things. So that's how, which has happened traditionally. But now, if we want to get kind of attached to that kind of habit, we need to be a little careful. So in that situation, what one can do is that rather than having fried part in farsan, if you have more of kurmura and less of fried things, that can be an option. And having it along with the meal, that can be an option instead of having it as a snack. That's what I can say. But again, as an Ayurvedic Vaidya, I would say the quantity should be less. If it's a larger quantity, then in the long run, it may disturb something.
Yeah, sure, sir. And Shivram has a question. So
Yes.
please go ahead, Shivram.
Yeah, thanks, Mahesh, for the insight you have given on approach to food. I have a question.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, thanks, Mahesh, for this session.
Yes. You're welcome.
The question is, how we can reach metabolism?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Would you mind typing your question?
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes. Now I can hear you well.
Yeah. Again, I would like to say thanks for the session. My question is how we can increase metabolism.
How do we increase what?
Metabolism.
Metabolism. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So basically, we have been talking about fasting for last many years. And now we have, not we in the sense, the whole world has understood the importance of fasting. So like you follow Ekadashi, you follow fasting, you don't eat something. So that in a way supports your Agni. So your Agni gets improved, and as Agni gets improved, it supports your metabolism. So that's like the simplest way to do that. But now in our regular practice, the way we need to do is that we can do we can have khichdi, like moong ki khichdi, where moong is 2 parts and rice is 1 part. Normally we have opposite of that. So now we need to have the Ayurvedic way, which is 2 parts of moong and 1 part of rice. That kind of khichdi can be consumed at least two times in a week for dinner. So that, and again, quantity can be less, so that it will improve your metabolism, it will improve your digestion. That becomes one particular part in the diet. In short, eating less quantity of food or following fast improves your metabolism. That is one thing. Another important thing which I have been suggesting to my patients is that doing Surya Namaskar. So if you do Surya Namaskar on a daily basis, that is very much helpful to improve your metabolism. So that's certainly beneficial. And in spite of that, if someone needs some support for metabolism, so then some spices, some medicines can also be thought of. As far as spices are concerned, moderate use of ginger, garlic, black pepper, these things will be helpful. But if you overdo that, that might increase heat inside the body. But moderate use would be absolutely fine. You can do that. So I just suggested 3 things: fasting, light meals, Surya Namaskar, and 4th one, using spices. So doing these things can certainly benefit in improving the digestion and metabolism.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Maheshji, Sophia here. My question, please.
Yes.
Maheshji, what does Ayurveda say about the consumption of water? At what time and how much quantity?
Yes, that's a great question, because many have like, there's a doubt about water intake, and it happens every time. So now when we think about water intake, we hear from the West that you need to drink 8 glasses of 8 ounces every day. So ounces is, I guess, a big quantity. At least even if we think about 8 glasses every day, so that can also be excessive for some individuals, and for some, they can handle that. So in short, everyone has a different capacity to take water. So that all depends on how much dryness your body has, how your Agni is. Accordingly, there is a need of water. So we need to focus on our thirst, how thirsty we are. Accordingly, we need to drink water. So we should not force ourselves to drink water. Like, I have to finish this bottle by lunchtime. So this kind of practice, it's like you're overloading your system with excess amount of water. And what Ayurveda believes is that anything that goes to your body, anything that goes to your system undergoes some kind of digestion. So if you're drinking too much water, the whole water is also going through the process of digestion. So in other words, you are overburdening your digestive capacity and you're creating excess moisture in your body. And in the long run, that excess moisture can be harmful for you. So that's how we need to understand our body and plan water intake accordingly. Someone who's regular, like a person who does regular workout, exercise, probably the need of water would be much more in that individual. On the other hand, someone who's doing a sedentary job, water intake may be minimal. So that is absolutely fine. We just need to focus on our thirst, and then we need to drink. And while drinking also, it is not recommended to just keep on gulping water. You need to drink it slowly and just first drink some water, let your oral cavity get completely drenched, and then drink it. So this is how the practice should be. Now, I'll just add one more thing to this, is that another question related to water, which is commonly asked, is like, how much water should we drink while eating? So Ayurveda specifically mentions that you're not supposed to keep drinking water while eating. You can keep a glass of water along with you while eating, and you can have sips whenever you feel the need of water. Like whenever you feel some dryness, or whenever you feel the food needs to be digested or food needs to be mixed well, then few like sips of water can be helpful. So this is all what Ayurveda says.